Keep watching The Politics every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Good afternoon. It's Friday, May 20th. I am Robert Press, the official reporter for the Bronx Chronicle, Parkchester Times, New York Parrot, and now Co-op City News. I may look a little frazzled because I just came from the 49th Precinct Fellowship Conference breakfast. And let me have my co-host introduce himself, Anthony, while I get together a little bit. Anthony, introduce yourself, please.
I'd be glad to. I didn't realize you were so frazzled. I guess the pancakes are becoming yourself at the moment. Hi, everybody. My name is Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO. As most people know, I have 3 lives. What some people may not know is that after 5 p.m. today, I'm only going to have 2. My first life is I am a financial advisor for a wonderful virtual financial service firm called RIVIECCIO Financial Advisors. My second life is I am an adjunct professor for personal finance at both Herbert H. Community College and Monroe College. And my third and final life brings me to you as the founding father of a wonderful political club in the Northwest Bronx called Northwest Bronx Democrats.
Anthony, what people have told me is we're too nice to each other. On Facebook, we go back and forth, beating up on each other. And here on the air, we're too nice to each other. So I don't know if we can change that a little. I don't really like to go after you. I know you like to go after me. But let's go into our routine here. The world news, the Ukraine. Anything new there?
Oh, God, anything new.
Besides the $40 million the U.S. is sending.
Say that again?
Besides the $40 billion that has been approved that for us to send over to the Ukraine people to defend themselves.
You know, Rob, the way you phrase it, it sounds like you don't want to talk about foreign policy and foreign events. And in one way, I don't blame you. In another way, I think you have to keep getting yourself informed. As we speak, places are in Ukraine are still being heavily bombed. People are dying. So I don't think we can just, No,
I know. But what's new? Have the Russians pulled back? Have they moved ahead? Is it still?
No, the Russians, to my understanding, are moving ahead. I think Putin will get his delayed victory speech. It will probably cover a quarter of the land he was trying to get. And what's going to happen with that going forward as far as Ukraine goes? I don't know. The bigger picture is now, of course, Sweden and Finland now want to join NATO, which, looking at it from a bigger picture, we're almost in a pre-World War II scenario. Battle lines are being drawn in the 21st century world. Some of these lines look familiar to the 1940s.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's right. And what's happening in the Ukraine is mirroring what Hitler did to Moscow or Stalingrad, where he tried to go across Russian territory and stalled, and the troops had to walk home. All right, this is what we're seeing basically with Russia and the Ukraine. But as you said, Sweden has mentioned they want to join NATO as well as Finland, and is what we've seen. And I have to say this: there was a horrendous act this past week up in Buffalo. 10 people were killed and 3 people injured. And I don't know if this is going to stop across the country or get worse, because right now, and we'll go into our next topic, Bidenomics. Right now, the country is going into a recession. Correct, Anthony? Or we're near a recession, would you say?
That's a good question, Robert. That's a very good question. There have been, in the last day or two, especially anybody watching financial news or news outlets, there's been a very big debate whether A, we're in a recession, as some people say, B, are we in what's called stagflation, as some people say, or there's even some other people that are saying we're fine. We're not booming, but we're fine. I think we're in the middle of what I just said. I think, personally speaking, we're in a stagflation type of mode, and no one can predict the future. But I think it's safe to say the very few times that the U.S. government has experienced the stagflation mode, it's never been good.
You mean good for the stock market?
Well, Bob, you have to also now be careful how you say that. You know, some people look at it separately, and I can understand why some people do that. Remember, during prior administrations, during COVID, right? Nobody could understand why we were having a tank economy, but the stock market was going up, right? So those are two. I mean, even though they are interconnected in one sense, the bottom line was that was what 99% of America saw, right? COVID made the economy dip, but the stock market went up 20, 30%, right? So they're really separate incidences, even though we know somewhere in the bottom of all of the plumbing, yes, they are interconnected. That sadly is where you have your 2%, people like me with the gray hair, the economists that know where those plugs are. The general answer to your question is, I think, to get back to Sweden and Finland for just 1 second, I actually think that's going to be a good long-term economic boom. Yes, this is all being created now through NATO, it's military, all that kind of stuff, but that could develop better futuristic economic partnership. So, of course, not today, but 5, 10 years down the road, those economic residuals, for lack of a better word, could help our economy during a stagflation mode. God forbid we go into another one 10, 20 years down the road.
Well, Anthony, with this $40 billion aid to Ukraine, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, the $1 trillion other bill, $1 trillion another bill.
Bob, let me answer that question very simply, and you're just the right person to ask the question. In most cases, right, in most simplified cases, would you hire someone to do something, or would you try to handle it yourself?
First, you try and do it yourself, and then if you can't, you hire somebody.
There goes your question. There goes the answer to your question.
We've been down this road in the past where.
So what? So now take the answer to that question and put it in a micro way. What should the answer be based on your answer? Go get the military to go in there and solve the problem. Don't buy military aid and give it to a foreign country that you don't know what the hell they're going to do with it, right? So go in there and handle it yourself.
But isn't the government borrowing money to pay for this?
That's what I'm saying. We're borrowing money to buy military supplies to give it to a country that we already know is going like this, right? Well, like I said, if you still believe it's a saving situation and you want to look at it from an economic point of view, using your own analogy, go in there and handle it yourself.
Right, but I mean, we've been through this in the past many times, a couple of times, I should say, where we see that the government is borrowing to pay for programs or whatever, and interest rates slowly inch up, which is what they are right now. What are they at? 4%, 5%?
It depends what area of the interest rate curve you're looking at. Yes, when we get to Bidenomics, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. I would only say, since you're talking about debt, right? In this case, it's government debt, but we're still talking about debt. Ladies and gentlemen, please watch Financial Focus University today, where we'll have a segment, how to consolidate your credit card debt and get 0% interest. Hopefully the government will be watching the show.
So are you going into Bidenomics now?
Well, you're the host. I'm following your lead.
Okay, well, let's go into it right now then. Since we're talking about the economy, give us a little word on what's happening.
Oh my God. Well, you know what, Bob? I never like to share numbers because, as most people should know, our stock market is open 5 days a week. It's really open 7, but it's open 5 days a week. And of course, I like to generalize. I like to be more specific with the numbers at the end of the week. So being Friday, the market closes at 4 o'clock. Of course, our show comes on at 5. But to talk about some Bidenomic areas of interest, right? What was announced, I'm just grabbing my pad. Forgive me for a moment. What was announced this week was a variety of, in my opinion, very troubling things. The first thing was that we showed New York State unemployment for youth. That was a very big number that came out this month, and that number showed an 18% drop. Retail sales, nationally speaking, are not booming. They are not dropping. They are pretty much flat. However, you do have now major retail companies like Target, like Walmart, that have lost significant monies and have now announced major layoffs. Why would they do that? Well, according to them, they say it's because even though retail sales is flat and okay, the rate of inflation has taken away all of their profits. So they've got one or two choices. This is according to them. So, of course, now they say they got one or two choices. They can either pass that to the consumer in the form of higher prices or lay people off. And sadly, I know they're laying people off because some of the family members of my clients, young adults, work for some of those companies that have just recently gotten laid off. I had a trouble client last night who was acting more as a mother, that was very concerned that, her 21-year-old child got laid off, and she was concerned, and she heard about this. And of course, I'm her financial advisor. So, she gave me a call, but that's a very troubling sign. So, you put all that together, right? What does it mean in economic numbers? Well, again, the market's not closed for the week yet, but I can tell you in advance, I think most people that own stocks this week will go more into it specifically later on in our show tonight, but this week will not have a happy week. And as you know, we have the Bob Press Index that also gets announced. And Robert, you're going to have to not spend so much more money on your ties because, I think the Bob Press Index is
I'll have to go back to the racetrack and bet on the horses, Anthony.
There you go. That's a good idea.
But we have about 2 more years left of Joe Biden before the new presidential election. Can you give us a little look into your crystal ball and what's going to happen at that 2-year level? Will the stock market go up because most likely a Democratic president will be gone and you might see a Republican president? Or will it go down because maybe that Democratic president, Kamala Harris, or I should say vice president, could be elected president?
There are many reasons, Robert, why I love economics. One of them is that when you look at economics in its purest form, right, you'll find politics has absolutely nothing to do with it. So to answer your question, it doesn't matter whether it's Joe Biden, doesn't matter whether it's Donald Trump, doesn't even matter whether it's Barack Obama. Because as we've seen for most of the last 2 decades, we have a divided government. We call it all sorts of things. We call it open government, unified government, integrated government. It's a divided government. And without choosing, side to side, because as an economist, we only focus on the numbers. These numbers are about as divided as you can get. So I honestly think the best person to answer your question would be Kamala Harris, because she has the deciding vote in the Senate. And I think there might be a correlation between the Kamala Harris vote and the Kamala Harris favors that she'll get during the next 2 years when I'm sure she's looking at her presidential aspiration.
Well, what Anthony is talking about really coming up later today is the announcement of the final draft of the revised congressional and state Senate maps.
All right. No, I wasn't talking about that.
Well, I mean, it's leading into
it. That later.
It's leading into it.
Okay. I didn't talk about it. I was talking about Kamala Harris.
when you were talking about Congress and the Senate, all right, this leads into
No, Bob, we ain't talking. You're talking about 2022. My point is that we've had a divided government for the last 15 years, right? So to get back to your earlier question, well, what do I see as an economic forecast in the future? What I see is exactly what we have now. Nothing.
That's very interesting, because the trends have been during presidential elections, the market drops, and if it goes up if a Republican wins, and it stays flat if a Democrat wins.
Well, like I indicated, yes, that's how a portion of America looks at it. One of the things I love being an economist is you take the politics out of it and you just do the appropriate number crunching. There are some traditional seasonal habits. I think I might have told you, or some clients I know I did in the last couple of days off camera, that yes, it's very traditional that the second quarter of every year is a slower time in the stock market. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But our current conditions, of course, take priority. And our current conditions do not look good.
And would you say in the third quarter that companies gear up for the final quarter?
I think, talking traditional, that you're not going to see companies start to gear up, as you put it. So probably holiday season, which again is pretty much traditional. There might be some sporadic things here and there, the back to school sales and in August and that kind of stuff. But around October, November is when you traditionally you see businesses start to invest. But again, they're doing it on two factors. Of course, number one, your traditional holiday season, but then of course, number two, well, how's the economy doing? And they're going to make that decision based on how the economy is doing from September to December.
Okay, well, I was asked just before, a person wants to buy a car, and they're saying that the prices of new cars is outrageous, and they can't even get a decent used car. What has happened to the prices of cars recently?
Well, now we're talking cars, because, yes, I'll admit, there are certain segments of the economy that don't follow tradition. Cars, in some cases, are going through all sorts of issues. Most of them are supply-related issues. Some of that is where our car shops are now located and being produced. And in my humble opinion, and it's just in my humble opinion, the third factor is what I like to call greed. The car industry has always been known for greed. There's, I think, no denial about that. But as we're seeing now in a lot of segments, of our current condition, I think as a society, we allow and even accept a certain level of profit, right? We can call it greed, profit, whatever you want. But I think, we've gone overboard, and I would say the car industry is definitely one that's gone overboard.
And what about the price of new homes or homes on the market? Has that gone much?
Homes on the market, Bob, are very interesting. I had a debate, a conversation with a person that sells mortgages that reminded me of the conversation I believe we had maybe a week or two ago on camera, which is, what is it a good time to buy a mortgage, and or buy a home to get a mortgage. And whereas this mortgage, and I was surprised that she was saying it, that she didn't think it was a good time, and yes, demand for homes obviously has gone down. I actually took the opposite position, because I said to her, well, what has the Federal Reserve said? The Federal Reserve said we're going to interest rate up, right? They haven't denied it, right? So if they said that, and if you're looking to get a 10, 20, 30-year mortgage, well, don't you want to lock in something now?
Right.
Right? So whereas she was saying to the audience, oh, I don't think it's a good time to, to go buy something now. Interest rates are going up. And on the one hand, that's true. Again, and this is again why I love, economics so much. And as I left the audience thinking this, because again, we were having this conversation, I just said to the audience, you know what? She's right. If you're planning on getting a home and only living there for 6 months, follow her idea. Because 6 months from now, as I'm sure everybody knows or should know, interest rates are going to be higher. And God knows what they might be after that, right? So as high as we think interest rates are going up, and they are going up, we know historically, right? We're talking 10, 20, 30-year mortgages. They are historically low.
So you would say to somebody, go out and buy a house right now with these low interest rates?
What I would
if
say
you can afford
is,
it.
No, this is what I would say. I would, of course, say, number one, give me a call, 347-575-5045. Number two, it works on a case-by-case basis. Would I be thinking that going in? Absolutely. But, of course, it's all based on the financial condition of the people that are applying.
One final question on this. So are developers buying up property right now so they can build in the future?
That's a question?
Yes. Are developers buying now in certain areas so they can build in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now? Because we have a friend who used to live next to a building that was being sold, and his property would be perfect.
I understand. I understand that there are many buildings going up in different parts of the city that when you look at these buildings going up, you will see graffiti signs written on the side. And what these graffiti signs say is stop the gentrification.
Because even on your block, there's a new building on the corner, and what are there, 4 houses right next to it that are a nice piece of property where another building can go up.
Here in New York City, and I only say it, I guess, again, because more so because of my gray hair, the era of wanting to own a home in New York City is gone. It's gone. It's not going to happen. And whether you want to own a home in the future somewhere else, well, of course, there's many pros and cons to that also. But here in New York, wanting to own a home is done.
And last night was a very important meeting in Community Board 10 because there's a massive project at the local food town on corner Crosby and Bruckner Boulevard that will stretch for 4 blocks and bring 331 units of housing, much of it affordable housing, and the communities around it, the community board and others are opposed to it. Do you think, Anthony, that the community is right? And we know that we've heard last night that the community board said, we are voting against this proposal. We don't want it. But again, we know community boards are only advisory. As you say, if the envelopes have been given to certain people, that project is a done deal. So what's your opinion about the meeting last night?
I have several opinions. First and foremost, I don't live in that district, so I have no interest in that district. But I do know that the area you described has historically been of a lower density.
Right.
I don't remember when, but I believe 10
Jimmy
years
Vaca,
ago,
when he came in, did it into council.
And I believe 10 years ago, they even created a resolution that indicated they wanted to keep it a lower density. And I've always believed, if that's what that community wants, then that's what they should have. So my opinion on wanting to build this monster out of nowhere is not so much the monster, because I don't think, if the community doesn't want the monster, the community shouldn't have the monster. What worries me more is, especially here in New York, is zoning. Because once the zoning gets approved, look out. Then you're looking at what I would call the new freedom land. It's gonna, or the new co-op city. They're just going to build all over the place. So to me, yes, the first monster shows not just a possibility of community character change, but of course futuristically, but it can't happen futuristically without zoning changes, which of course, first and foremost, goes to the community board.
Right.
The board meeting last night was unbelievable in a number of different ways. My second opinion, again, I don't live there, so I don't have an interest, but I do know that when it was happening in areas that I lived in, Bedford Park and Norwood, the community made it literally an everyday attempt. I shouldn't even use the word attempt, an everyday conversation to have with our city council person. And Bob, living in that affected area right at that time, that we went through not one, not two, but 3 city council people. And the community kept in touch to make sure that that community council person, was always on top of things. I find it very troubling, although I don't live there, that the councilwoman, Marjorie Velasquez, could not attend a well-publicized event. And let me just finally add, I don't want anybody to say, oh, well, she's a rookie and, and all of this and all of that. Miss Velasquez, and you can answer this better than I can, Bob, is a very big community activist in that area.
And she was a former community board.
So we're not talking somebody that's, Johnny around the block one time, right?
No, she's a
her not to be there, but
Tony,
to put in writing,
okay,
I don't want the thing to be there.
Tony, let me hold you up here. She's a former Community Board 10 member for a long time. She was treasurer of Community Board 10. But in her statement, she feared for her safety. I have to say that. And I don't blame her, because people were thinking that they are not, that she's not in favor, or I should say she's in favor of the project, when it may not have been true. And they are prejudging her. They are judge and jury before it happens, the trial.
What I do know is this, and I can only go by fact. Over 70% of the community board last night voted against it. I also know prior to that vote, they had protests where hundreds of people showed up to rally. If Ms. Velasquez believes in those same thoughts, then wouldn't she feel safe in that environment? You told me off camera she was at the 4-9 precinct thing that you just attended, right? Well, I'm sure she must have felt safe in that environment. So you're telling me she didn't feel safe in a community that 3/4 of the community board voted against it?
Anthony,
that she's been on this board, so she's got friends.
Anthony,
you're telling me she didn't feel
just before I'm going to tell you a story before we go to commercial, because we're only almost at halftime, where we'll pick up the district lines afterwards. I was on Community Board 8 when we had the Putnam Trail incident. All right, we were voting whether or not to put the Putnam Trail through Van Cortlandt Park, and one of the problems we were getting is people were getting phone calls. They were getting threatened not to vote for it. Other people would say vote for it because they were the people who were building it. The environmentalists didn't want it. Okay, I myself abstained, which means you're voting no. And the first proposal by the Parks Department failed.
So what you're telling me is that you're comfortable with her following the same tradition as you just described.
No,
basically,
I was at the meeting.
You guys are scared. You guys
I was at the meeting
on record. I've been through protests. I've been through many protests. I've had people yelling me in my face. As some people know, there's video being circulated right now, where someone called me a racist and I had to address it. And
I got a video too.
Is that what you're telling me? That you want to wear somebody gets to wear a badge, but they don't perform their duty? I'm wearing a badge right here. It's called a professor's badge from Herbert H. Lehman College, where later on today I get to go to a graduation because I performed my duty.
I'm not going to go into protecting the councilwoman, but I would like to go to the commercial as soon as I'm
just saying, and I want to say it for the record.
Let me finish.
During that whole time that we're talking about here in Bedford Park, Norwood, when we had the water filtration plant, that Alvin Coppell, Andrew Cohn, and down the line, helped us in the project. What is Kevin saying there?
Something about 125 people were at the meeting, I think, and a 55-year-old person or something like that. What is it, Anthony?
I'm going to try to read it. Hi, Kevin. How you doing? 125 over 55 years old, mostly white, angry men and some women. A sad state of comedy, angry and pumped up. No wonder at MVALEZ played it safe and stayed away, which I guess she's talking about Marjorie Velasquez.
Right.
No wonder she played it safe. Well, you know what? I'm only going to comment on that little snippet that I think is important that Kevin just said. Playing it safe. Are we putting in elected officials to play it safe? I mean, I can tell. I mean, let me tell you. Go get Andrew Cohn on this show. Go get Oliver Coppell on this show, and let them know. And you ask them how many times did Anthony knock on your office to finally get that downzoning approval approved by the community board, and they can tell you 30 years of horror stories, I'm sure. So again, using Kevin's words, right? Play safe. Is that what you did, Robert? Play safe?
I don't know, Anthony, but we're going to let you have the final word there, and let's go to a break right now.
Bye, everybody.
Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, if how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony RIVIECCIO, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University.
Okay, we're back. Gee, Anthony, that's a nice commercial. How much did you pay for it? But if anybody...
every Friday, 5 p.m. on the YouTube and Facebook New York Parrot channels.
And there is a little byline going down underneath us with a phone number in case anybody wants to advertise out there with Parrot TV on this show. Or
and
on
listen, and Bob, forgive me for one moment. I'm not good at this, but I'm going to give it my best. Ladies and gentlemen and muckety mucks, now is the time to advertise with New York Parrot TV. What are you waiting for? When you have people that you see weekly, like the host with the utmost, Mr. Robert Press, and the financial professor himself that gets worldwide ratings, how could you not want to advertise on this show? So incumbents, challengers, all these people that don't know what district they're in, which is our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to advertise so you can educate the audience and even yourself as to what district you're going to live in. Take it, Bob.
And he's given me a perfect segue into our redistricting, the congressional and Senate lines. At the event that I was at with the police breakfast, there was State Senator Jamal Bailey. And his words were, I am a person with no district. I don't know what district I have right now. Because later on today, the special master and the judge are going to put down the districts. All right. There have been maps that have been put out. And let's go through the congressional maps first, Anthony.
Robert, we're going to do exactly what you want to do. But I got to give Mr. Bailey a lot of credit because that was my worry about this segment. I was trying to tell you off camera. I'm very reluctant, but we'll do it. But I'm very reluctant to talk about district lines that are not official yet, right? We've been doing that for the last 3 months. And what has happened as a result of it? Right? Campaigns are shut down. People have got laid off. People have created other campaigns. And yes, it also creates more opportunity. But as we also see with this opportunity, it also creates more disaster, right? We have Democrats that supposedly have loved each other for 20, 30 years, that within the span of 2 days, with nothing official, now I got the knives out and I'm getting ready to kill people.
You're talking about Manhattan, not the Bronx.
No, I'm talking about everywhere. It's going to happen here soon.
At the breakfast was state Senate candidate Christian Amato, who said, yes, I'm going out campaigning right after the breakfast. So he's on full throttle. However, we've had Lisa Hofflick on the show, who is running in the 34th Senate District, and she's been redistricted out of the district, according to the maps on the state Senate. And there's word that she may not run.
Robert, and you've just given the perfect example. See, she was on our show. She's created literature, and all of it said the 36th state Senate district. So even if she can, in theory, she can still run. Now she would have to run for something called what it was always originally, the 34th state Senate district.
This doesn't have a district on it.
Well, then, believe it or not, she was smart. But when she was on our show, she was advertised as the candidate for the 36th state Senate. Sadly, so was Christian Amato.
Yeah, that has its own letters. Okay. But she can still run for the district, and she can win. All right. This is the congressional map. All right. What we see here is the Bronx. On the right side, you will see Co-op City. The purple line is the Bronx. Co-op City was.
Well, I don't see any purple line or any other line.
The line to the right, Anthony, of that before.
Okay. My apologies.
Okay, that's the end of the Bronx. Co-op City used to be represented by Jamal Bowman, Congressman Bowman. He also represented Riverdale. All right. What's happened is he now only has a little sliver of Wakefield on the new map. And Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now has picked up Co-op City, which was in the first map that was drawn by the redistricting committee. And Congressman Torres has picked up Riverdale, which they were giving to him, and he's kept it now. Unfortunately, with your area, Anthony, you're in.
Wait a second, Robert. Because again, you're going under these false analogies.
Well, if
what
this
I
map
said
is
from the beginning, and I'll say it again today, that the one thing that's constant, right? The one thing that's constant through this whole process is that the lines are being moved. And I think it's fair to now say, after four associations have been affiliated with this mess, that all you got to do is follow the envelope. So again, we can talk about Riverdale. We can talk about my area. Riverdale is, of course, your former area. We can talk about the East Side. We can talk about Brooklyn. We can talk about Staten Island. Follow the envelopes, and keep in mind, as people are saying, we're not done yet, right? There are still more envelopes to cash.
Well, we're still not. Well, Anthony, I don't think things are going to be changing that much. People have said that.
You don't think things are going to change that much, Bob? We've had 4 organizations put their hands on a map 10 years ago, regardless of how you felt about it. 10 years ago, supposedly following census numbers, that we have 4 different maps, 3 of them thrown out of court, and we obviously can see that this judge is from Arizona, right? So I don't know what map he's looking at. So and guess what? Through all of this, we're still not done. So, we can talk about maps, but until they're official, I really think we should save this conversation for next Friday. So, Jamal Bailey's absolutely correct. My district is in China, but go ahead if you want to keep going.
Tony, what's going to happen, and what happened 10 years ago, was the lines were thrown out and the lines by the special master were put in. whether the special master wants to move over a few blocks or up or down or across or take out a neighborhood, or as we see in Brooklyn, what's happened is Bedford-Stuyvesant is being split in half. And people in Bed-Stuy are complaining. This is a black district that was put in there so Shirley Chisholm could be the black representative, and now you're dividing it in half. Well,
Bob, I'm gonna tell you something that's more close to home, and I say that from your religious standpoint because you're yelling about it in Brooklyn now. You know what's happening in areas like Crown Heights and Brunswick and the Jewish?
Yeah, Hasidim Jews are complaining.
Yeah. So, you know, again, this guy was from Arizona, and I guess, I mean, he could have been from China the way he made these maps. And again, sadly, he's the one that gets the envelopes. Not even the elected officials are getting the envelopes.
Let me talk, Anthony.
They're the ones giving it because they're trying to capture their places back, which actually might be the better story here.
Anthony, New York City.
That might be the better story here, Bob. How does Richie Torres, according to today, right, but it's not official yet, but through four maps, all of a sudden get Riverdale and gets to keep it through every change in the map. Through every change, an East Side representative gets the furthest west side of the Bronx, and through 3 different changes, he gets to keep it. How did that happen, Bob? How many envelopes do you think came out of that?
Anthony.
No, Bob, explain that to me. See, because again, when you want to talk about maps that aren't official.
If you would let me talk, you might hear your answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. As I said, New York City has gained over 500,000 people over the last 10 years. Now, when Shirley Chisholm was in, that's what, 50 years ago? So New York City has gained probably 2 million people since then. And what is the biggest borough? Brooklyn. Brooklyn has gained probably 500,000 people since Shirley Chisholm was there. And these neighborhoods are going to grow. And there's only X amount of people allowed in a district. So once a district gets full, you have to split it. And this is what this special master has done. It's not only, like you said, to the Hasidic area, to other areas. It's going on. Okay? That is how Richie Torres can be.
Bob.
You're not going to let me finish, Anthony.
Bob, through these 4 changes in the maps, right?
You're not going to let me finish.
These 100,000 people leave?
What's that?
During these 4 changes that took place in the map, did any of these 100,000 people leave?
They were, according to the census of 2020.
According to the census, they never left. They were there. So how can you have 4 different maps and then say to me, oh, it grew? Okay, fine. You took that into account. How did you get 4 different people with the same amount of people?
Let's see how the maps came about. The New York State put a independent redistricting ballot on the ballot. All right, and the voters approved it to have independent redistricting. The independent redistricting committee came up with a map, which the elected officials put a little clause in there saying that if we don't like it, we can just wait it out. They'll come up with a second map with changes. And if we don't like that, we can wait it out and make our own maps. And that's exactly what they did. They made their own maps, which were illegal.
And now we have a third. And now we have a third map. And again, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did an East Side representative on the first map get Riverdale, and in the second and third map still keep it?
Why? Because the district had to be moved up. Jamal Bowman's district had to be moved
so
up.
It has nothing to do with envelopes, Bob. I hear you. It has nothing to do with it.
You had to make the districts in New York City and Long Island smaller and push them up to Westchester and above. And okay, that's what happened. That's where that district came
Bob,
from.
as I've indicated to you before, the political spin is nice, But this is why I love economics so much, because the numbers don't lie. Numbers
All
don't.
right.
Politics ain't got nothing to do with
Okay,
numbers.
Anthony,
11
let me
is
continue.
1 plus 1.
Let me continue. Okay. In Manhattan, you have Jerry Nadler now in the same district with Carolyn Maloney. And like
Correct.
you said, they're going at it like cats and dogs.
Correct.
All right.
And now they'll be forced to, because now Bill de Blasio is in the race.
It has created District 10, which is Lower Manhattan, and Brooklyn, which is where Bill de Blasio lives in Brooklyn. And Bill de Blasio sees, well, if Nadler is going up against Maloney, this seat is open. I might as well run for Congress. All right. And now you're going to have a half a dozen people running for that seat in Congress. All right. Because they feel they can win it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Christine Quinn runs for it, because she was the councilwoman down there and council speaker up in Westchester.
Long term, it might turn out to be a great thing, because people thought for the last 30, 40 years, we were being heavily gerrymandering from one side, political side, to the other. And you know what? Maybe this will put everything in whack. But in the process of putting it back in place, what you're doing is you are indirectly destroying some political local organizations along the way. There is no way the Manhattan Democratic Party, for example, is going to be the same party it is a year from now after this fight. There's no way that party's going to be the same.
Well,
and that goes double for Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Democratic Party was one step away from a revolution, right? Well, guess what? This could actually bring it over.
They're in it. And the other district that people are complaining about is the Maldale Jones, Sean Patrick Mahoney district up in the Upper Westchester, where Mahoney has more of District 18, I believe, but he's running in 17 because it's the other part of his district, and it's more of Mondale Jones's district. Now, Nancy Pelosi has put her 2 cents in, endorsing Sean Patrick Mahoney. She says he's a terrific person. Okay, so this is what's happening in Congress. As I said, and you said, Richie Torres will be keeping Riverdale. AOC.
I say he's going to be keeping anything. Again, nothing's official
if these
until
maps
5
become
p.m.
official.
today.
If these maps become official. And
that way, right.
And Jamal Bowman is only being given a little section of Wakefield, as Adriano Espaillat being pushed up out of Harlem into the Bronx is continuing with a little bit of the Bronx down to the George Washington Bridge from going over by you. So he may continue to be your congressman, or not. You don't know if it's going to be Richie Torres or him or somebody else. For all we know, you could have AOC as your congressperson, depending on how they do the maps. But this is what's happening in Congress. The one last thing we need to say is that Congressional District 3, which was supposed to start up in Mamaroneck, run down through the Bronx, into Queens, and all the way out to Long Island, on this map is not happening. And that leaves former state senator Alessandra Biaggi without a district. The district would start in Whitestone, Queens, across either the Whitestone or Throgs Neck Bridge. Now, does someone who lives in Pelham still want to run in that district that goes from Queens all the way out to Long Island without the cutout that she had of Throgs Neck that she wanted, of Country Club, of certain areas that she wanted, including where she lives, Mamaroneck, Scarsdale, but that's not going to happen. So she can either run in the district number 3 out in Long Island. She could run against AOC, which I don't see happening. She can run against Richie Torres, which I don't see happening. Or she can run against, Jamal Bowman, which looks like that might be her best bet, because Jamal Bowman is now moving up into the area that he didn't have. He's leaving the Bronx and moving up into the white area of Westchester County. So I can see Alessandra Biaggi, should that map stay, running against Jamal Bowman. That, unless she wants to run for her old seat, but she doesn't live in the district anymore of her old seat, as drawn by the Senate map. All right, so she's got to think now. Now you should be the fly on the wall, Anthony. What am I going to do? which district, congressional district am I going to run for, or am I going to run for my old state Senate seat? Now,
well, like I always said, Bob, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when that initial decision was made for her to run for Congress. She's still indicated she is going to run for Congress. And I think later on in December, when we hopefully have a segment called The Political Ideas of the Year, this will be number one for stupidness. Because whoever came up with this idea for her to run for Congress in the first place was an absolute idiot, even irrespective of all these map changes. She didn't have a shot in the first place. So,
as I said, Anthony,
Biaggi, I wish you luck, and that's about as far as I go.
We're running out of time, so let me just continue. The final draft will be out later today, and that'll be it. Starting tomorrow, petitioning will begin again. Anybody who qualified before in a state Senate or congressional district does not have to go out and petition again if they qualified. All they have to do is write in a letter that they intend to run for the seat that they got, or they intend to run.
And Robert, a very important point, and I'm going to try to be quick, but I think it's important. I said this to you off camera. See, this is, I guess the only way to correct this 30-year problem is that now the courts and the government are going to accept petitions that, based on these line changes, could in a normal situation be deemed illegal, right? If you're going to say, oh, you don't have to carry petitions again, then how do we know all those petitions are generally valid? We don't know.
No, you're correct on that, because if the district changed, for instance, AOC did not collect in Co-op City where Jamal Bowman may have. And if
you can have a whole second, as I said to you before, the people that are going to make millions are the lawyers and the consultants.
Right.
Because I know if I was working on either side, I would challenge that in court just because.
Let me get the political calendar in, though. Tomorrow, petitioning starts for anybody who isn't qualified on these races for Senate or Congress. As a matter of fact, I saw Irene Estrada today, who I said to her that you can run for state Senate now. Petitioning starts tomorrow, and you have 3 weeks to get signatures. They are due June 8th through June 10th. So you got 3 weeks to get signatures, I told her. And you need 1,000 for the state Senate and 1,500 for the Congress district. But we all know you need about 3 times as many, because most of those get knocked off during any challenging period. So it's safe to come in with the most you can, which is about 3 times the requirement. What is going to happen with Ms. Biaggi, I don't know. But when we go to the state Senate lines, we also have another state senator who will not be living in his district, and that's Gustavo Rivera. Gustavo Rivera's district has been pushed down below where he lives. So if he's running in his district, and there's no reason why he wouldn't, there's nobody who's challenged Gustavo in 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? No real challenger.
Robert, Gustavo Rivera is a perfect example of how stupid these lines have become. Right? In 2010, when he first ran for his seat, that seat was a Northwest Bronx seat. That seat represented Kingsbridge, parts of Riverdale, Norwood, Bedford Park, and look where it is today.
Gustavo never represented.
Gustavo didn't run for another district. He was in the same district. They just, over the course of the last 20 years, have been moving the lines, right? And now those are where his lines are.
Anthony,
you know as well as I do, and when he first ran in 2010, just before the first gerrymandering, you know, that was a Northwest Bronx district.
Well, Anthony, if we go back 10 years, or 20 years, I should say, when Jose Rivera was the Democratic Party chair, what did we see? We saw Jose Rivera go after Jeffrey Dinowitz by putting Jeffrey Dinowitz's club in his 81st Assembly District club into the 78th Assembly District, so that Jeffrey Dinowitz's club was now on the wrong side of the street. The side of the street where the club was the 78th, and the other side was the 81st. And to make matters worse, Jose went up the hill to grab one election district in one of the poll sites up the hill, just to add insult into injury to Jeffrey Dinwiddie.
Listen, you know why you'll never hear Jeffrey complain? Because I'm sure Jeffrey will tell you those 10 years were the best 10 years that the Ben Franklin Club ever had.
Right.
So I'm sure, they both can take credit for that monstrosity.
And 10 years later, which is 10 years ago, Jeffrey Dinowitz put his club back into the 81st Assembly District and kicked Jose out of Riverdale. Not only that, but Jeffrey went down to 195th Street, where he used to live. When he got married, he lived on 195th Street. Okay, so he basically gave it back to Jose. As far as it goes, we're going to have to see how these lines are, because we see State Senator Louis Sepulveda's line go from his area, goes down to Throgs Neck, half of Throgs Neck. They're using the Cross Bronx as the dividing line. And then Louis' district comes up and around Gustavo Rivera's district, giving him Fordham and Belmont. All right. Is it maybe because that's where Louis, eats his dinners or whatever? I don't know. Okay. But that's Jose Rivera's area in his assembly district. It used to be Gustavo Rivera's district. It will now be Louis.
I will only add, because of what you just said, that yes, Louis has frequented that area a lot in recent years. I also frequented, and he and I would actually say, maybe the last 2-3 years, more than any other time, we've seen each other in that area.
One more thing I forgot. In the redistricting with the 34th state Senate seat, and I said this to Mr. Amato today, should you win, you're going to have to find a new office, because in these state Senate lines, the current 34th Senate district office is about 2 blocks short of the district line, and it falls within the 31st Senate district, which comes in from Manhattan. So they're going to have to find a new district office in the 34th Senate district.
And who is the current incumbent in the 31st?
There is no incumbent in the 31st?
Yeah.
Robert Jackson is.
So Robert Jackson has a new office.
No. Robert Jackson will keep his office in Manhattan, but his
well,
office.
If he wants a second office, he can have that.
Well, yeah, if he wants it, Biagi's in there. But whoever wins that race, whoever wins the 34th state Senate race is going to have to find a new office in their district, unless they change these ones. Riverdale is now split. Where we go to eat, Salvatore's, you go 2 blocks.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about this process, I understand Carl Hasty has got at least 2 to 3 protests happening in his district office today.
One of them is starting at 1 p.m.
Issues I won't go into it. So if you want to protest about these district lines, just look up Mr. Hasty's district office. You can join the crowd. They're protesting about a number of different New York City and state issues today. And
like Anthony says, this is the madness that the politicians do. They take and they try and be as greedy as they can. And once it's found out that, hey, you guys did this illegally, or, hey, it's unconstitutional, or it's not fair, somebody goes to court, and this is what happens. Then the judge decides, well, I'm going to have to make the lines, and we're going to try and make them as fair as we can. I'll call in a special master who came from Philadelphia, and he'll draw your New York City lines.
Politics 2022, campaigning and lawsuits. Get ready to party.
Well, Anthony, we'll be back next week, as we're running out of time right now. We got about a minute left. So before I close the show, do you have anything final to say?
Ladies and gentlemen, as you might be aware, COVID rates are going up. Please be safe. That even goes for Uncle Kevin. Kevin, when you're riding your bike, please be safe. As we now know, these masks indoors are now the law. So everybody stop asking me silly questions and be financially and socially and medically protected. Have a good weekend, everybody.
And let me just say, as far as COVID rates, if you want to see them for New York State, New York City, the 5 boroughs rather, you can check my blog, www.100%. blogspot.com. That's 100, and then the word percent Bronx at .blogspot.com. I put up the daily rates. It's just that it seems that our governor doesn't want to put up the Saturday and Sunday rates anymore of COVID. She wants to cut back, and she'll spend millions and millions of dollars on, bribing the state Senate majority leader to vote her way, but she doesn't want to put up COVID rates. And that's about it for me right now. So let's close the show. And Kevin, be safe out there when you're riding your bicycle and stay in the bike lane. Thank you, everybody.